So I wanted to talk today about an issue that's come up in the US progressive community, online, on social media. And I'm going to just talk generally about this issue. It's about colonizer attitude. And firstly, as a white person, I don't think that I'm completely absent, that attitude is completely absent in me, because I've grown up as a white person, although from the LGBTI community and as a woman, but I'm still a white person. I've grown up in a community, in white privileged society, in a society where white people are at an advantage in every way, whether it be seeking jobs or whatever, and also that the laws are always in favor of white people, and of course these days always in favor of corporations. So I've grown up in that society, particularly in Australia. I was born in 1960, and I've grown up in a society where Indigenous people, Europeans committed a genocide in Australia, and it's a sort of an ongoing genocide too, because of laws. There's a disproportionate amount of Indigenous people that are imprisoned in, they're imprisoned in Australia, in the Northern Territory, where a third of the population is Indigenous. A recent census revealed that it's a disproportionate amount of Indigenous people are imprisoned. And that's the same in the United States, where there are a disproportionate amount of black men and black people in general who are imprisoned. And that is due to the racist laws and the structural racism. That was also aided by somebody like President Bill Clinton, who enacted some laws that sort of made that much, much worse. And that is all tied in with the private prison industrial complex, prisons for profit. And now those prisons for profit are using black slave labor, literally, it's a neo-slavery, to make items, to make profit. So that's sort of, and as we, unless we haven't been paying attention at all to news overseas, if we don't live in the United States, there's been a black person murdered by police with impunity every 28 hours almost. This is sort of what's going on every day. The recent Philando Castile murder, where, as usual, he was driving while black, that's what they call it. He was murdered by the police, and nobody was prosecuted for that. And that's what is meant really by, I'm no expert at this. I'm a nobody really, I'm just giving my view as a white person. That's what is meant by white, sort of a society which is structured in a way to preference white people and their wants and needs, etc., over other minority groups. It's non-democratic, it's racist, it's white privilege, that's what it is. It's a colonizer attitude. Right from the founding fathers onwards, there's been a colonizer attitude, an elitist, oligarchic attitude toward the population in that country. And the same goes here, really. Although Australia is probably, in a number of ways, is different to the United States, but in relation to Indigenous people, Australia is no different. It's been an ongoing genocide. In fact, where I am here in Tasmania, I'm living on land that was once where once Indigenous people lived, and when European colonizers came here, they went out of their way to kill every last Indigenous person in this state of Tasmania. And I think they almost succeeded. I'm not sure if every last Indigenous person was killed, but I think it was to that point. So as a white person, I'm a recipient of that genocide that took place because I get preferences that I'm not even aware of. Like I said, I couldn't possibly not have some of that somewhere in my subconscious, even though I work on it. You know, it's a thing that we as white people need to work on all the time and think about all the time, that we are recipients of often of genocide and also of massive repression that is enacted and enshrined in laws. So, you know, we need to think of that. So it's not possible, if I was brought up in that kind of society, it's not possible for me to not have somewhere in my psyche that sort of attitude, that a coloniser's kind of attitude or something like that. It's not possible to not have. It's like, you know, it's like a fish trying to recognize that a fish is you know, swimming in water when water has been all around that fish right from the beginning. So, you know, it's something that you get so used to that it's invisible to you. And I'm going to get to this point about this particular person who, I'm making this point in general about coloniser attitude and white privilege because of an incident that happened in a anti-war conference this year where a white woman sort of wanted to enter into a closed black group, the Black Alliance for Peace, and even though it was a closed black group, they allowed her into the room, and but they asked her not to film, to live stream from that room when they were speaking. And this particular person had a problem with that, and then proceeded the following day to then accuse them of reverse racism in a live stream video, and then has proceeded since then to enlist some black men to prop up her case that she was and to almost in some ways chastise. Well, two men refused to do that, and one person who is one man who is a black man who's a very nice man has been and is innocently trying to sort of defend her. I don't even know if he's really aware of the extent of this, what happened there, but this black man has been a friend of hers and also happens to be a friend on my friends list on this social media page, enlisted him to defend her and to sort of in some ways chastise the black community for a sort of rejecting an ally, you know, like an ally. Well, I'd argue that particular person and their actions was the actions of a colonized ally who has a colonizer attitude toward that particular, it feels like that they expect to be able to go anywhere they wish, even if, because that's sort of the attitude that a lot of white people have, that we are entitled to be anywhere we wish, anytime we wish. And I've got a little guys come up to say hello. Anytime we wish, we feel we're entitled to do that. That's a colonizer attitude, and unfortunately, this person whom I'm a friend with and whom I've tried to say something on their social media page and explain this, and many people have tried to explain this to her, including the members of the black progressive community, but she's not going to take that advice on, which is very, very sad. And also enlisting people, black people, to defend her, enlisting black people to defend her when they may not know the whole story, or maybe they aren't quite on page with what this all means, I don't know, but is a very unfortunate thing, particularly when she's enlisting them to sort of to kind of rouse on, in a way, the black community for this particular, for, you know, in a way that's meant, in a way that's supposed to be that they're rejecting an ally. Well, that's not true. They just, like any group, and it doesn't matter even if it's a black group, if any group wants to be a closed group, they have a right to do that. So that's the first thing. That particular person, you know, should have just been okay with that and said, okay, you want a closed group, it doesn't matter if they're a black group. You want a closed group, you're entitled to that. That's your organization. But she didn't. And I sometimes wonder if it had been a women's group and they only wanted women's only, and she was able to come in, would she have had the same problem? Her argument was, well, it's a peace anti-war conference. We should all be, you know, sort of holding hands and not excluding anybody. But this isn't about exclusion, and also she's not recognizing that there is a structural inequality in society, and minority groups, and I happen to be one, even though I'm white, I'm a member of the LGBTI community, and I'm going to tell you a little story about that soon. You know, that minority groups are oppressed in various ways, and of course some are more horrifically oppressed than others. Of course, I suppose, you know, I mean, oppression is oppression, but I mean the black, you know, in the United States, lynching still happens. You know, it's never stopped. Lynching of black people has never stopped, and it's done with impunity, just like it was in the early 1900s and before, when slavery was legal. Slavery is still legal in the United States because, you know, they just do it in a way that is not so obvious. Black people are imprisoned at a disproportionate rate with unfair, unjust laws that prosecute people that are poor, or that have some drug issues or whatever, or that are living in certain areas, or just because they're black. It's sort of like it's the way the laws are, and that's what you know, that's what's happening today. And black people are being shot for just driving their car, for you know, for ridiculous reasons. It's sort of like it's basically you know, just lynching, and then these police officers get away with it, literally get away with murder. So that's the kind of society that that particular group, minority group, is living in that society. And if we as white people, I mean, I don't live in the United States, but like, I understand that, like, this particular person who has been enlisting these black people to defend her for not, as if she was excluded, and that we all should be holding hands or whatever. Of course we should all be, it's not a post-racial society. You know, there's still immense structural racism in there, and minority groups need to be able to get together and to feel safe in those spaces to talk about issues. And this has been explained to that person, and she's not going to have it. And that's why I say a coloniser's attitude, because as white people, we expect that everybody should just step aside and let us do whatever we want. You know, that's a coloniser's attitude, and we all have it. Even those of us who think we're kind of, that we've sort of examined ourselves and examined the issue, to a degree it's somewhere in the psyche, because we've grown up in it. We've grown up with this privilege, and it's not this. When the word privilege doesn't mean privilege as in being wealthy or anything like that. Privilege means, in this case, white privilege means having the ability to get jobs that other people will be passed over with due to the color of their skin, or their you know, their sexual orientation, or if they're trans people, etc. different minority groups are passed over, and white people are sort of given opportunities in many ways in education and all areas. And if we can't recognize that, then that's really, really a worry, particularly if we call ourselves allies and of the black community, or allies of the LGBTI community, or whatever. If we can't, for example, if we can't recognize that that if we're heterosexual, and that we have certain that we're so used to being able to just celebrate relationships and talk about them all the time, and that people from the LGBTIQ community don't have the sort of don't have the same sort of acceptance, or don't have the same have to in some ways still it's improving, but still kind of keep to a sort of a low level in some ways their relationships, or who they are, etc. If heterosexual people can't recognize that, then they need to think about that, because like homophobia, transphobia, etc. Still exists, and the laws, I mean, in this country, in Australia, it's amazing. There's so many other countries have, not that I sort of endorse the whole idea of marriage or anything, but I think that if people want to get married, they should be able to get married. That's just a minor point. That's just the tip of it. But in this country, if I wanted to get married, I cannot get married. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's the 21st century. It's 2017, and I always scratch my head. And my partner and I think it's funny. I've been together with my partner for 14 years. We actually think it's, I mean, of course it's you have to laugh at it because it's so ridiculous. I've often found the whole thing of homophobia and transphobia ridiculous, and all of that. The whole fear of difference is ridiculous. And I'll just briefly say that I'm vegan as well, and I think this whole fear that we have of this whole discrimination and oppression of other, of what we do to non-human animals is sort of something that we, all of us who are not vegan, need to look at. And that's a colonizer attitude too. No matter who we are, if we're a human being and we're eating, wearing and using non-human animals, then we have a colonizer attitude too, that we've colonized this whole planet, driven out nations of animals, and literally wiped them out because they're inconvenient to us. And we've done that with impunity, and we're all participating in it if we're eating, wearing and using animals, because I'll put some links and you can look into that, because I'm digressing. But I just want to also point out, a colonizer's attitude doesn't just apply to human animals. It applies, and that includes all of us, it applies to non-human animals. So until we're vegan, until most of the planet is vegan, we still have that colonizer attitude and that idea of a human supremacist attitude. So that's the point I'm making there. But back to the this particular. I'm going to tell a story now about it's about when in the late 90s, and when I was in the United States for a while, and I had a partner who was black, a black woman, cisgendered woman, who was, and I was staying with her family, and I was taken along to an event, which was I was the only white person there, and I knew enough about the United States and their history, the history of slavery, etc., and all the 60s and the Jim Crow, and sorry, a little cat's coming to visit me and ruin Jim Crow and all those laws, and then the lynchings, etc. I know about that. We in Australia, these issues are not unknown to us. I think, in fact, sometimes I think that in other countries actually have more of an understanding or an awareness of these issues sometimes than a lot of people in the United States. I think a lot of the education outlets are sort of educational institutions have kind of been to a degree dumbed down or censored. But anyway, I went along to this particular event with my then partner, who was black, cisgendered woman, and we and even though I knew all about these issues from the past, but this is the late 90s, and I did not know that this ongoing violence from police was still happening. I didn't know that because social media hadn't really taken off, and so you don't really hear about any of this in the mainstream corporate media, of course, because they're it's all part of the structural racism of favouring white people and otherizing. So I didn't know that. But I didn't think that that racism had gone or anything, had vanished from society. But I didn't know about the ongoing issues of police brutality, etc. I knew about the Rodney King thing, but that was about it. So I went into that, and I went into that particular event, and everything was fine. But in retrospect, I realize that there may have been some people, and there may not have been, but there may have been some people in that group that of black people, relatives, etc., and friends of my then partner, who may have thought, oh no, why has such and such got a white girlfriend, or it could have just been, oh no, why has such and such, is she pushing her, pushing this homosexuality or whatever in people's faces. That could have been it too. It could have been a lot of things. I think that her father was not very friendly to me for the whole time I was there. I was there for a few months. But it could have been a number of things. He may have been, I don't assume anything, he may not have been a very happy man. He had problems. He may have been sort of homophobic and didn't want my then girlfriend to be sort of putting it in his face, so to speak, where it's all out there in the open. He could have thought, oh no, my daughter has a white partner. You see, there's a whole bunch of things could have been playing out there. And I imagine that if he was at the time, I think about 70 or something. So he would have grown up, he would have been born in the 1930s, and he probably experienced all that awfulness. This is in South Carolina. He probably experienced all that awfulness, would have experienced that all through his life of the Jim Crow and the whole thing, the violence and the discrimination. So, he might have just thought, oh no, now, even if that, I considered that even at the time, even though I wasn't aware of all this police stuff, but I considered that, he might have felt that, and I was okay with that because, well, why wouldn't you? If you have grown up with all that oppression and you're 70 years old or whatever, and you probably just want, your daughter to, well, he may have just wanted her to be heterosexual for one, but just say he wasn't homophobic. He may have just thought, God, I wish, my daughter would have gotten together with a black person, or something. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe it was none of those things, you see, but I was okay with whatever that was because, well, one, I respect people's parents, but two, like, I can, I sort of think, well, I can understand why somebody would feel like that, somebody from the black community, So, and this is where, and the point of that story is that, and of course that wasn't why we ended up breaking up, of course, but that's just a, I'm just giving that story because I want to explain that particular woman, white woman, who had such a problem with the fact that this group, this Black Alliance for Peace group at the United Coalition Against War conference in 2017, the reason why she should have been okay with the fact, first of all, that it was a group that was a closed group. So just putting aside all the black community issue of the Black Alliance for Peace and wanting a closed group, she should have been okay with that, first off. And the second thing is, but she should have been okay with the fact that the black anti-war community wanted to discuss issues by themselves, and that instead of having this attitude that because she was a white person, or she says she's colorblind, this word colorblind, which is the new sort of, in some ways could be called the new sort of it's a way of denying the situation of structural racism and stuff, expecting that we should all be behaving in a way that is beyond these issues, when in fact these issues are just as rampant now as they ever were, and are ongoing. And to sort of say that because I am, because she was saying, because I'm colorblind, in quotes, therefore, I'm sort of more, in some ways implying that she is more evolved in a way, and that we should all be kind of moving forward, beyond these sort of differences. Well, yes, of course we should all be moving forward beyond these differences. That's sort of, what we should all be aiming for. But the problem is we're not beyond those differences, not by a long stretch. And by a group wanting to discuss issues between themselves, is sort of like they're entitled to do that, whether they're a black group or whether they're a knitting group. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's sort of like that. It's their group. That's okay. But the fact is that particular white person wanted to, it felt entitled, because as white people, we're used to just being able to go wherever we want, whenever we want, and we think of ourselves in some ways as sort of saviors of different groups, like as if these people need us to move along. Well, of course, we all need allies. We all need allies, to help us move. To help us move justice forward. It's good to have allies, but the black community doesn't need white people to save them. They need allies that will support them and not be trying to, kind of take over, or think that we're some kind of, this whole attitude of the quote unquote white man's burden kind of. It's almost a bit like that sort of thing. That's the colonizer attitude that we sort of have to various degrees, somewhere deep in our psyche or not so deep in our psyche. This thing that white people know best and all this kind of stuff. That's what I'm probably not explaining this very well, but that's what white privilege is. This sort of, we have advantages in so many ways, even over people. For example, say if I was in a very disadvantaged financially, as in a very poor family, white poor family, and there was another family that was a black family that was very, very poor. I'm still going to have privileges over that particular family just because, or an advantage just because I'm white. I'm probably less likely we might be driving down the same street, say in the United States, and that that black family might be gunned down in their car because they're reaching for their coffee or something, or putting their hands on the steering wheel or something, and I'm passed over because I'm white. You see? And we have this. We might have the same. We might be living in the same street. So that's what that means, and you have to, and we have to, as white people, respect, and and that goes for white heterosexual people too. Heterosexual people need to also look at the fact that they don't have to even think about where they hold hands with their partner, or when they kiss them, or if they put photos of themselves with their partners all over social media, and whether if their employer sees that and they happen to be a bit homophobic, if they weren't straight, if their employer happened to be a bit homophobic or whatever, or transphobic or whatever, that somehow they're going to pay for that in some way. They're going to be penalized. Heterosexual people don't particularly have to think about things like that. They also don't have to think about being on the receiving end of violence simply because they're a particular group. Like, I've been a recipient of violence from a best friend who found out that I was from the LGBTI community. That they sort of, it was a sort of a misogynist and homophobic thing that they did. And I won't get into that, but it was bad. And I've been also, hauled up outside a dance, an LGBTQ dance, and I was surrounded by a bunch of born-again Christians, and they were all men. And my partner was there, the then partner at the time. We were there, and they were surrounding us. And we had to go back into the venue because we were afraid to go to our cars. We were lucky that they didn't do something to us, that we were very lucky. I've had a number of friends have been beaten up, and female, friends that have been beaten up. And I've been sort of stopped in the 80s in Queensland. The police, if you looked a little bit alternative, but they were very, very on to gay people then. And I was pulled up numerous times by police and my car searched. And, I think it was just kind of, it's a sort of a terrorizing thing. It's intentional, making it really, really sort of difficult, and letting you know that you're not accepted in the moral community. That's what that is. That's part of it. But with all, and I could go on. I have a long list of things I could describe. But I mean, but the thing is, I'm not a black person, and I don't. When I get in my car and I drive down the street, I'm not in fear that maybe some police person is going to pull me up and find some excuse to kill me, and that they're going to get away with it. So it makes it very easy for them to do that. I don't have to be concerned about that. So that's the point I'm making, is that I don't, even though I'm a particular minority group, I'm not a black person in fear of being, sort of gunned down, or my children being gunned down. I don't have any children, but if I did, I don't have to be afraid of my children being gunned down. Like, when I send them off to school, are they going to come back? I don't have to worry about my children. I read the most appalling thing about the private prison system. Now, this is something that people need to think about. And this particular person who has been enlisting these black people to defend her actions at that particular anti-war conference. Think about this, that the private prison system actually look at the elementary grades of black people, black children, to decide how many beds they need in their prisons in the future, the grades of elementary children. black children. Just think about that for a moment now. So that's the private prison industrial complex, vulture kind of capitalism, racist structural laws. And that's one of the reasons, why the laws are tipped in favor of white people, and that they're hoping for an ongoing supply of black people to go through these private prisons to then be the neo-slavery today, the 21st century slavery, and be producing products for the private prison system for a few cents a day or $1 a day or something. There's ways around making slavery legal, so slavery still exists today. Isn't that disgusting? So it's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's appalling. And we white people, if we want to truly be allies, if we truly want to be allies to black people, then we need to work on it every single day. Just like as a vegan, I work on speciesism every single day, because I've grown up in a speciesist society which is still very speciesist, and there'll be little bits of speciesism every day that I catch myself with, because it's like breathing. It's like being a I can't think of another example, but it is like breathing. It's like eating. It's sort of like you grow up in it, and you have to dismantle it every day, speciesism. And it's the same with sort of racism. We white people have grown up in a society where everything is tilted in our favor. Everything is tilted in our favor. So everything, and the laws, and even though we may not even see it or realize it, it's there, and we're benefiting from it. We're benefiting from the structural laws, racist laws. We're benefiting from how everything has been set up. It's like a game that's been set up. This is a bad example, but poker machines that are intended for the punter to lose, or to, it's worse, of course, than that. But it's a setup, really. It's a setup intended for white people to always remain, sort of the winners and the rulers in a way. And anyone who has challenged that, who challenges the status quo, is not going to be seen in the corporate mainstream media. They're not going to be heard from by government, and at worst they'll be killed. You only have to see what happened with Martin Luther King Jr. or Malcolm X. Anybody who's fighting against the status quo, against the injustice of the status quo, at worst will be murdered. But in these days, because the corporate media basically will not allow anybody who's challenging the status quo, most corporate media will not give any air to anybody who is challenging the status quo. So anybody that you see in the corporate media speaking about issues, most likely in 98% of those cases, they are propping up the establishment. They're propping up the privilege and the white privilege. They're sort of a watered down version, a pretend progressive, a faux progressive. That's often the case in the United States anyway. In Australia, it's pretty much the same, because the Murdoch press, Rupert Murdoch owns the majority of the press, 3/4 of it, I think. And we don't really have any independent media to speak of here that actually has any sort of real, sort of real following and that gets enough air. We just don't. We don't even have anything remotely like the Real News Network here, and I worry about the Real News Network with their with some of the things that they've been doing in recent times, but they're still pretty good. And you know, RT is amazing in that they actually have all the academics and the people who are challenging the status quo on Russian TV. That's funny and sad that that's the case, that the United States, that if anybody wants to know anything that's really happening, they have to watch some shows on Russian television, like or they have to read alternative media, because if you follow the corporate media, as I've said in many of my vlogs and podcasts, you would not know what is going on at all. It's just you're being fed a complete propaganda. But anyway, I'm going off the point here, but I just wanted to say that I'm really sorry that that particular person has chosen to go this route and to sort of exploit, really, I can only think of it this way, exploit a black friend in this way to prop up their, what I'd have to say is a sort of a racism, it's racism, to prop up their sort of bad behavior. And the more that they do this, unfortunately, the more offensive it is to the black community. The more disrespectful it is to be telling the black community, the black progressive community, that they're being narrow in their focus, that they're the reverse racism, in quotes, that they're being reverse racists towards her, is just such an insult to the black community, the black progressive community. And over such a stupid, what is a stupid incident, really. I mean, of just not being allowed to film, to live stream in a group. I mean, all of this for that, and it's caused repercussions. Somebody else got involved whom I highly admire, and now that person is also sort of gone off the rails in a way. And I just think, how sad. I just can't abide by it any longer. That's why I had to say something. I've tried to say something to that particular person who was who did that live stream about being not being allowed to live stream in that group. I've left comments on her personal page about it, and they've been ignored. My partner has written to the other person who is a friend of said person, who has had a great channel, live streaming channel about progressive issues, or rather about just about issues of anti-war and etc. And they've gone off the rails, and they have not responded. And basically, I just think that's incredibly sad. That's two people that I sort of thought had more of an insight into this, and I'm not trying to be judgmental, but that's two women, who I thought had some real. I thought, I can't believe they can't understand this issue, and I can't believe that they're trying to frame it as if as if anyone who doesn't see what they're saying, anyone who doesn't agree with what that one person was trying to do by getting into that group, that somehow that's because we aren't evolved enough to understand, to be post otherization, that we're somehow buying into otherization and separation and divisions and stuff. That's not what it is at all. And to sort of frame it that way, I find disingenuous on the part of one of them, who I think couldn't possibly not understand this issue. I can't see how they couldn't possibly understand this issue. So I'm thinking, what on earth are they doing? And I just, I really, really hope somebody shares this video with them, although I don't really think that that's going to make any difference at this point, and I think that's unbelievably sad. because I really did enjoy those channels. But, you know, this is sort of a level of ignorance and a sort of a willful ignorance at this point, because they've had members of the black community trying to explain it to them. A friend of mine has tried to explain it to one of those people who has that channel that has lots and lots of viewers and has been an incredible ally, a credible anti-war ally, and whom I've admired greatly. A friend of hers has tried to privately explain this to her, and she's rejected that and blocked that person from their page. I mean, it's so sad. I find the whole thing incredibly sad, but it's beyond the personal issue or the personal thing. It's really denying the experience of black people. You know, it's denying the experience of black people and the black community and the ongoing violence against them that just seems to get worse and worse and is done with impunity and has been going on for, centuries now. It's a denial of that by continuing to enlist black people to prop up and defend them. Not that both of them are doing that. Only one person, the person involved with that person who said they were excluded from that group, that anti-war group, that person is doing that. The other person just, I don't know what the hell went there, but they seem to be in some ways on the same. They don't seem to understand what the issue is. So that's really, really sad. Anyway, I just want to say to the black community, I know, look, I'm a nobody and I live in Australia, and you're probably thinking, what on earth is she doing commenting on that? But I actually do some regular, at the present time, some regular live streams on the Real Progressive page on Facebook, and mostly on veganism at the present time, but I'll be doing stuff on anti-war, anti-imperialism soon. Those guests up to mid-October. Most of those guests will be doing that. And with the occasional talks about veganism on one of those nights. But I just wanted to say that I'm very, very sorry that this is happening, because I'm just very sorry that it's happening. And that I'm very sorry that there's a lot of supporters who seem to be on those particular women's pages who are going along with it. And that there are a lot of people who don't go along with that. A lot of white people who don't agree with what their position is and what they're saying. So that's really all I wanted to say. That I'm sorry. I also I'm sorry that that's happening. I think it's very sad, because that means there's less allies for these issues. And also, I just wanted to express my own sort of personal little story. So anyway, that's all I really wanted to say. And I hope that whoever, those particular women who have sort of gone off on that sort of ignorant direction, I really hope that one day the penny drops, so to speak, for them, and they kind of wake up and realize what's happening. And I hope that they apologize and try and make amends for this, because we need all the allies that we can get, and we also need to recognize that if we're in a group like, we're white people, we need to recognize that we're always going to have we're going to be recipients of white privilege always, and that we have to dismantle that every single day, because most of the time it's invisible to us, the sort of privilege that we have. Okay, well, that's all. So thanks very much for watching. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. My name's Trish Roberts. Till next time, bye for now.